Hello, this is Meng, and today we will introduce you to the basics of Sketch. Sketch is a design tool entirely vector-based and focused on user interface design. It's easy to pick up and costs a fraction of the price of Photoshop. And because of its simplicity, anyone with little to no training can learn Sketch. On top of that, it's perfect for today's need for designing for multiple devices. When I first started using Sketch 5 years ago, it felt like a glimpse to the future. I immediately made the switch. But for many, it was an uphill battle. Vector-based design tools were unpopular back then. Very few believe in a stripped-down, UI-focused design tool. But Sketch has completely changed my workflow. As a design application that I spend 8 hours a day on, there is no other tool that influenced my work as much. Its growth is out of this world. New plugins and resources are coming out almost on a daily basis. We've come a long way since. Artboards, symbols, and libraries have become common in this space. Designers now collaborate more than ever thanks to Sketch-first plugins like Abstract, Craft, Flinto, Principle, and Framer. Big companies like Apple and Facebook often releases their UI kits Sketch first. Sketch is the ultimate tool for iOS, Android, and web design. It barely weighs 45 megs in disk space compared to Photoshop 2.1 gigs. As soon as you open Sketch, you are greeted with an infinite canvas. Just like native apps, you have a familiar user interface with a toolbar, navigator, and inspector. Consistent with the macOS design language, the toolbar is customizable when you right-click on it. You can set all your favorite tools by dragging in the ones that you want. Since I'm a big proponent of keyboard shortcuts, I suggest keeping the ones that are hard to remember, yet frequently used. Some of my favorite tools are symbols, scissors, outlines, and round to pixel. Let's talk about artboards. Artboards are the screens of your app. Each artboard represents a screen or an interaction within a screen. Before, designers used to save a file for each screen that they designed, resulting in dozens of files to manage. Now, thanks to artboards, you can have your entire app with dozens of screens exist inside a single Sketch file. It's easy to create an artboard. Just press A. Then, on the top right, you can select from a large list of screens for iOS, Android, web, and print. You can even customize one. Additionally, you can select between landscape or portrait. And with artboards, you no longer have to hide interactions, dialogues, and states, since you can just put all your screens next to each other. Instead, it is recommended to show all your layers so that you can easily preview everything on your iPhone. You can easily rearrange, duplicate, or export them. To select an artboard, you must select the title above it. Also, your artboard should have a background color, otherwise the resulting screen will show a transparent background instead of what seems to be white. When you work with dozens of screens, you can have a great overview of the whole experience by creating an artboard covering all your artboards. Like this, you can export an image of the entire flow. I recommend the Artboard Manager plugin to keep your artboards organized. Let me introduce you to Pages. Each page represents a platform or a completely different resolution. For most projects, you'll have 20-something artboards for a platform like iOS. Then, you'd create another page for Android, web, Apple Watch, tvOS, and so on. That way, you can have an entire project within a single sketch file, saving you a ton of time switching between screens and platforms. You can easily open the pages by clicking on the arrow next to the page name, or by adding a new page by clicking on the plus button. Also, you can quickly switch between pages by using the drop-down. The keyboard shortcut is function key up arrow to go one page up, and function key down arrow to go one page down. Let's now talk about UI templates. To access them, you simply have to go to File, New from Template. Sketch comes preloaded with a number of user interface templates for iOS, material design, and responsive web. For the iOS UI kit, it already comes preloaded as a library. It has a number of important elements such as status bar, navigation bar, and tab bar. If you're designing for Android, you'll love the Material Design UI kit. It has all the elements you need to follow Google's own design guidelines. You can also download your own templates from the web, such as the iOS 11 GUI or from the Facebook resources. To save them to the list of templates, open the file, then go to File, Save as Template. Later, you can go to File, New from Template and check what you have saved. For iOS, I recommend designing at 1x with the iPhone 8 375 by 667, since that is currently by far the most popular resolution. Also, custom artboards can be created by clicking the plus button. In Sketch, you work with pixels. Since we're designing at 1x, your pixel units will be equivalent to points. So, 1 pixel is equal to 1 point. There are many tools in Sketch that will help you design with incredible precision. Smart guides are intrinsic to the experience of using Sketch. In fact, it's an essential feature in most apps where drawing is involved. As soon as you start dragging in a layer, red lines will appear to indicate that it's well aligned or centered properly. Unique to Sketch, you'll see smart guides appearing even before you start drawing, enabling incredible precision. It also measures the distances to the artboard itself. It's important to mouse over different elements to see the distances. Distances can work against rulers as well. Rulers can be enabled by pressing Ctrl R. They're good for setting persistent guides that can be snapped or measured against your layers. To create a guide, simply click within the ruler regions. Hold Shift to jump by 10 pixels. In the editor, you can even get the distances between a layer and a ruler guide by holding the Alt key and hovering the guide. As you create new shapes, you can instantly align them horizontally or vertically within the artboard. When two layers are selected, they can also align with each other. Distribute objects allow you to normalize the distances between multiple layers. If you open Layout Settings, you'll find a way to set up your own layout grid system, such as the famous 960 grid. So with this, setting up 2, 3, or 4 columns proportionally is as easy as snapping the layers to the grid. Layout grids are particularly useful for bigger screens that occupy multiple columns and help you create clean divisions. Examples are web, iPad, and tvOS interfaces. Enable grids, Ctrl-G, to divide your canvas perfectly. For instance, material design encourages a 8 DP grid system in the order for shapes, text, and baselines to fall perfectly into these lines. This promotes better spacing and cleanly divided layouts. For iOS, the guidelines are not as strict. Mostly, you are encouraged to have a minimum padding or margin of 8 points. Use Show Pixels, Ctrl-P, to make sure that your design is pixel perfect. Pixels will only be visible at more than a 100% zoom if you enable it. If you zoom at 1000% or more, you will see the pixels grid automatically. One of my favorite tools in Sketch is the Scale tool, Command-K. This isn't the same as resizing, since it actually scales every property: size, radius, border, shadow, and inner shadow. For instance, a 1 pixel border scale at 200% will be 2 pixel. By only resizing, it'll remain 1 pixel. This will be indispensable for converting 1x UIKit to 2x or 3x, as it even works with Artboards. If you're new to typography, I suggest heading to the typography section and start downloading a few modern fonts. The good ones that comes with macOS or free on Google Fonts are San Francisco, Avenir Next, OpenSong, and Roboto. If you have a subscription to Typekit, download Museo and Proxima Nova. To create a new text layer, press T. In the inspector, you can choose the font and edit the styles. You can use text styles to reuse the same style across multiple text layers. It works similarly to CSS, which allows you to create a global style for H1, H2, H3, and so on. With autosave enabled, Sketch will create a version history of your documents. In case mistakes happen, and they will happen, you can revert back to an older version of your Sketch file. As a result of working with vectors, new shapes may not always land on the pixel grid as you create them, making them not as sharp as they should be. To enable Show Pixel, press Ctrl-P. As you align or resize, this option will make sure that your pixels stay sharp. A lot of people struggle with colors. That's why I think it's important to have a solid starting palette. Sketch Color Tool lets you store colors globally or for a specific document. Use the eyedropper tool to pick any color inside or outside of Sketch. With this technique, you can quickly start your own palette. Good palettes are iOS, Material Design, and Flat UI. Colors are really easy to work with in Sketch. As explained in the Colors section, you can switch from RGB to HSB, a more intuitive way to manipulate colors. Like this, you are in control of how much hue, saturation, and brightness you need. Sketch will automatically detect the colors used in your document. To access it, click on the color itself, and colors will be ordered by how many times they were used. Global colors are shared across all your Sketch documents. On the other hand, document colors are document specific. I made one using iOS, Material Design, and the Flat UI color palette. There's a link on the section where you can download it. There's a good plugin for saving your own palettes or download from other designers. In the same window as the color picker, you can switch to the Gradients tab. In iOS, gradients are often used for app icons, backgrounds, and buttons, combined with blur and vibrancy to add a sense of depth. On the Mac, they're even more prevalent. You can edit your gradient by dragging the ends of the slider. You can also rotate or add new gradient points by double-clicking in the slider. Radial gradients are typically used for large backgrounds to give a more realistic spotlight. You can achieve interesting results by dragging the points outside the bounds of the canvas. Angular gradients are especially handy for circular shapes backgrounds, like those on the Apple Watch. Gradients can be easily imported, but you can add them manually like in this video. There is a link in the section where you can download the sketch file. Patterns can be used to repeat a tile design and create interesting backgrounds by using a tiny image. I often use this feature in combination with the Sketch Generator plugin to quickly set up avatars and image backgrounds by using the Fill option. There is this great site that lets you use their library of gorgeous patterns. If you want to replicate dust, paper, aluminum textures for presentations, or to serve as an image background, then use the noise fill at a very low opacity. Additionally, you can use overlay or soft light to blend the colors even better. It is recommended to always name your layers and group similar layers together. You can use Command G for that. When you do, it is much easier to manage and organize your document. You can drag outside to export to one XPing asset based on the layer, group, or artboard. You may override that setting by using Make Exportable. One of the convenient things about Sketch is that it plays really well with other Mac apps like Finder, Keynote, Pages, and Mail. Copy an image or text to the clipboard, and it will allow you to paste them to Sketch. Press Command+V to paste your image or text. Right-click, paste here to paste at the mouse cursor's center position. Command+Shift+V to paste in place at position 00 of the selected layer. Vice versa, you can copy any image or text from Sketch to other apps. For apps like Keynote or Pages, it'll copy the vector format, which makes it infinitely scalable. Symbols makes it easy to share the same elements across multiple artboards. This is especially useful when you reuse the same elements multiple times, like for status bar, navigation bar, or tab bar. You won't need to go back and edit those elements one by one. As you update one, it'll synchronize to all the other ones that share the same symbol. iCloud works great with Sketch. Every save not only stores the file on your hard drive, but also on Apple's servers. If your computer breaks down, you can always retrieve a backup of it. If you work with really large file, autosaving can take a lot of disk space. That's when you need to clean up your backups. And there's a handy website where it explains how you can improve this process. iOS uses Blur in many places, from the lock screen to the notification center. Background blur is a feature unique to Sketch, and it's extremely convenient. The blur is a dynamic sheet placed on top of multiple layers in the background. It updates in real time as everything changes. Creating the exact same effect only requires you to create a shape and change the blur to background blur. From there, you can customize the blur strength. As you move the blur layer, the layers underneath blur automatically. You can use soft light or overlay to add interesting effects that replicate the vibrancy in iOS. In addition to background blur, you have the usual Gaussian, motion, and zoom blurs. Background blur can be an expensive feature to the performance of Sketch, so don't overuse it. Flatten to bitmap if necessary. As a UI designer, the things you'll be missing are your hard-earned libraries of icons and logos. There's a solution for that. As long as you know how to export them to SVG, the process of migrating to Sketch is painless. If you happen to have a set of icons that is exclusive to Photoshop, you just need to get the SVG out of them. This process requires Photoshop and Illustrator. Consider two things. One, you should work in vector. Two, always work from scratch except for your libraries. The biggest reason for why designers are reluctant to switch to Sketch is because of these expectations from their coworkers. It's a fair assessment. There is no direct solution to that, but I will say a few things. I've worked with Sketch at 3 different places with a number of clients. In all of them, I've successfully converted every designer, engineer, and manager. The trick? Be convincing. The cost of staying in Photoshop is far greater than the cost of switching to a tool tailor-made for your work. If legacy was an issue, I would never have switched to the Mac 10 years ago.